What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be taking a peek over here at the XRP price chart to talk about the price action that is going on right here. Since we started this fall happening here in April, currently sitting at 42.5 cents, coming off of 58 cents. In addition, with Bitcoin sitting where it's currently at right now at 27,700 as I'm recording this morning. Now, if you've been watching my YouTube videos, if you've been following me there on Twitter, you know we've been talking about this for some time. We were talking about it on YouTube, then I posted it here on Twitter on March 21st about the structure of XRP. At that time, right here on March 21st, the market was very excited to see a big green candle show up in here. But of course, like a Debbie Downer, started showing, hey, I think this is actually just going to go into another accumulation zone. And I continued to post on this tweet thread over here on Twitter, showing it starting to play out as it began to continue to unfold. So I started that thread on March 21st. Then on April 5th, I put out a video discussing what I could imagine how Bitcoin would play out. That we would see a short squeeze taking us up to fall back, retrace, and then go in for this plunge back into like the 24,000 area. And I've been doing a tweet thread update on this over here on Twitter on how I would imagine this actually playing out. To head down into the levels of, 27,000, bounce back up to about 30, and then roll itself down to about 24. And just like the XRP thread, continuing to update this as progress keeps on ticking by. And then yesterday, the update as we are now back down at the floor again. So we're left with some interesting things going on here with XRP right now as Bitcoin sits down at these levels. Something I posted about in yesterday, and we'll just read this really quick. I said, Bitcoin now taking a stab at the breakdown. Typically, these will plow through the support and break down. It's important to watch because this is where fake outs can happen. Should supports hold, time to consider bottom forming. Eyes on it closely to see if it fakes or plows. In most circumstances, for this structure, that is what comes next, is a big aggressive move to the downside. We've talked about that back in here, from back in August and September of 2020, when Bitcoin fell from $12,000 back down to under $10,000. We can grab that to show this is how these will usually go. We'll usually have a big aggressive move to the downside. It's also how they played out up there at the top. You can move that over there. And see the same thing played out in here, that you eventually have your aggressive move that plows right back through. Now, one thing to take notice of is there does seem to be some support that comes in there before a breakdown actually does happen. Sort of just like one kind of final stall that ends up occurring. That also occurs here in our fractal, right back in here. And currently, that's kind of where we are right now with Bitcoin, and whether or not this is just a little bit of a stall happening in here before the bigger plunge ends up coming through here. Now, this is my base case. I've been presenting this for over a month at this point. It still seems to be playing out exactly as anticipated, I've left these boxes on the screen to show this. We've been tracking it since then. Before that bounce even ended up showing up, it bounced right back to where expectations were, which is retracement levels, only to head right back down to the lows again. This still seems the most logical to me, just based on the structure that we've done to the upside of 5 waves. This would be an ABC correction. It would still be bullish, but it would definitely bring back the 10 to 12 to 14K people, scare the market once again. In addition, summers are usually cruel summers, usually boring, usually rough, not a lot going on, not a lot of liquidity in the market during the summer. And in addition, I've even gone through volume profiles to show that this whole area right in here has really just a volume profile gap. There has not been much trading that has taken place in here at this particular level. And we can take a look at that right in here. And you just see it by going back in here, how there's just no trading that has really taken place in here. Each time we've gotten to it, we've just kind of cut through it like butter. There's been no real trading activity at this price level. And you can see that represented over here on the fixed volume profile range, which I can grab all of that and show that if we look at the volume profile of trading activity everywhere in here, where is the gap at? It's all right in there. You can take a look right here. There's your gap. Our next gap to the upside is right up in here. So if we're to go close these gaps and fill them up to build actual supports in those levels, we would need to spend some time trading in here. hey, what do you know? That would make some perfect sense to go ahead and spend some time trading in there to close out the volume profile. Then what next? Where's the other volume profile gap? Right up here. Where does that happen to be at? It happens to be right back at the 702 Fibonacci retracement. So BCB, this is supposed to be an XRP video. We're supposed to be talking about XRP. That's a lot of Bitcoin talk, but I'll discuss why here because we're at this interesting level currently right now. Like I mentioned in here, Bitcoin is now taking a stab at the breakdown. Typically, these will plow through the support and break down. It's important to watch because this is where fake outs can happen. Should supports hold, time to consider the bottom forming. Eyes on it closely to see if it fakes or plows. Like we mentioned, typically, Bitcoin will find some supports in here temporarily before that bigger move ends up coming. But should Bitcoin decide to bounce out of there, head back to the top of this range once again, we could be seeing a consolidation before another break to the upside. Again, let me reiterate it. I think this is the most likely circumstance coming. If I had to put confidence levels on it, on which one I think is going to happen, I probably put 85, 90% confidence that this is the thing that's coming. So it's not 50-50. This seems to be the most likely thing. But I definitely know that our eyes can help us see, hey, I clearly see head and shoulders forming here, where we have shoulder, head, shoulder. And then what do we typically do? We typically will plow through the neckline and break down. But by this point, most people have seen this likely. And so while we sit here and wait to see, is this just this final little attempt to break down and then eventually, boom, we're going to get it here in the next couple of days? Or do we find some real support in here? So it's something to keep an eye on closely right now. It does appear to me, from a time perspective, right? When we had this thing happen a couple of weeks ago, I was at consensus, right? I said, hey, a couple of weeks of ranging in here seems to be the most likely. It seems that the range is now mature enough at this point to me to say, we are going to find out in the next couple of days if we're going to get the answer for this whole thing that I've been doing, all of this stuff. That answer will be coming within the next couple of days, is what my thoughts are. And so, like I've said, it's been this 42-cent box all the way down to about 30 of my accumulation zone happening for XRP. And while I'd love to say, hey, this thing is just going to do exactly this right in here, and we're just at this phase right in here, and then we're going to drift all the way down in here. I don't know that. That's why I've always used this large box to say it could be this big range. I'm definitely not interested way up in here. I think we're going to have to pull back in here, but this range could be large and tricky. And so let me kind of show you some of the reasons why on that, right? So let's say that we are just going to be going with exactly this, right? We're going to say, hey, this was the same size right in here. This thing pulls up to here. This thing pulls down in here. Well, here's a problem that you see right in here is one, it didn't pull down as deep as it did last time. And let me darken that up a little bit. There we go. One, it didn't pull down as deep last time as it did this time, right? So it bottoms out right in here. Well, where do we bottom out? Rather than bottoming out at 35 cents, we bottom out at 30 cents, right? Then you go back over here, and if you're going to align it like that, well, then this bottomed way lower than where we bottomed right in here. Essentially, it theoretically would have bottomed at 25 cents versus 28 cents. So if we align that fractal in that manner, it's not perfect, right? And well, if we head over here, we do get these to line up, right? You get this top over here, you get this top over here, both at the right levels, right? The top over here from back in September would have been at about 55, 56 cents. The top over here in March, they're at about 58. Those aligned, those look good. Structurally, all these things look good. This is how we should have played out. And in this circumstance, it would take us down there, right? It gets us down to 32.30 and into that area, right? But of course, is this scientific, right? And it's not scientific because we're having to kind of adjust things the way we might want them. For example, this is fine for this top coming in over here back in September. This is fine for this top over here happening back in March, but it's not okay here, right? And it's not okay for back then when we capitulated back in June. there's inconsistencies there. So are you being completely honest with it? Hard to say, right? Because we could do this. We can go back and we can say, well, why are we even using this fractal in the first place? Why are we even playing with the idea of this thing? And that's because it is something we have seen before in a similar time frame. I'm always skeptical when we're going to pull fractals and use them because we think things look similar, but are the conditions similar of why why we're using them in the first place? And of course, this fractal that we're applying here is taken from back in here. This from back in 2015 and 14 that, we had a bull run in 2013, crash, retrace, reaccumulation, and then it breaks out. So we're using it in a similar environment where we've had a crash, a retrace, and a reaccumulation phase happening right here. And then you say, well, are there any consistencies on why this thing should even be used in the first place? Has the market acted in any way similar to that time frame? And what we can clearly see is that the price did pull from the top right back down to the bottom perfectly, right? The exact same percentages as they did back then. And we can go back and even measure this really closely just to say, are we being honest with ourselves? And we can say, here we go. This is that pull down. That pull down ended up being 85.55%. Now let's head over to current times right now. We'll remove that off of there just to get an accurate measurement. What did we say? 85.55%. What are we right here? I'm a little bit too high there, but 85.45, right? Very close, 85.4%. So you have 85.55 versus 85.4. Then after we do that, we start behaving similarly to what the accumulation schematic has looked like at that phase, right? That phase is that you've already done a bull. Take these off. You've already done a bull. You've done a crash. You've done a retrace. You've done a reaccumulation, right? You've done a bull. You've done a crash, you've done a retrace, and now you're doing a reaccumulation. And then is price acting similar to the reaccumulation phase? And yes, it is acting very similar, but is it acting exactly the same? Not exactly. If we modify it slightly, we can make it look awfully similar, right? These things look great, but if we're going to be honest with it to say, hey, how about that 85.55%, right? If we go from the top to the bottom in here, what are we left with? Well, we're left with that maybe our accumulation is happening lower, right? These bounces, these go higher, these are higher, these are higher, higher, higher. But what we see is that even in this final spring phase of the market, that it does take out, right, this area right in here. For XRP currently, that's right here. That's right back there at about 35, 36 cents. So that opens up the door to say, hey, we could be accumulating for the final flush of a spring phase down below all of that, right? Which would all be in here, right? So that gets us down to that 30-cent level for final accumulation. But at the same time, if we're honest with the price behavior, which was this 85.5% fall, and we say, well, where did it find its support at in here? It found it right in here. This is really the support level. And on our current price action right now, we know we have a gap that sits right there at about 38 cents. So we've now opened ourselves up to say, hey, this whole area has the potential to be that zone. But then you're left with one more thing. Anyone remember the 22.5 cent days? That would be this area all right throughout here, right back on top of that support level right there at 42 cents. For those who weren't here in 2020, some of you were, traumatizing time period. That's this. And that's where we pull right back down in. And what do? We have our little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rolls back up, and then the final excess that comes back down to smash into that 22-cent level, holds until it finally goes, which we would be at right now. So you open up that door to say that whole area, which is why I've had that box there the whole time to say, hey, look, I don't think we're going to go higher than here. But when we get down in here, this is where I start taking my stabs. Now we can look at the technical indicators to see how price was behaving during that time period here on like the relative strength index. We do see some very similarities going on in there, but that we did dip down into like oversold levels, which we're really close to, right? And this is on the daily time frame. But even so, when we did do that, that didn't mark the bottom, it still actually is very similar to where we are currently right now. So why do we keep talking about Mr. Bitcoin? Well, because it seems like he's going to give us our answer. And the good news is it seems like it will happen within the next day or two. we're right there at that phase where either we're going to find support or we're just teasing the support, getting ready for a bigger breakdown. Should the bigger breakdown come through, seems pretty likely we can rule out the whole 22.5 cents style support that we saw back in 2020. And if we're going to be grueling this out for some time here to work out and fill out this volume area, then we probably got some time in here. But should a surprise show up in here and supports hold and we start firing right back up to that upside, I have to start taking these things into consideration that we're wrapping up this fall. Now, we can overlay this all we want, but having to remember that, to be honest with it, we should be a little bit higher and that we're actually relatively close. Again, just overlaying fractals because they look similar or we may want them to happen. For me, it isn't good enough. It has to be, is there confluence to do that in the first place at all? And I say this all the time, and it's the most unsexy thing to say about XRP is that it's ridiculously tied to what's going on in the rest of the crypto market. If there's liquidity pouring into the market and there's like altcoins running, that is when XRP runs. One positive thing that's happening is the Bitcoin blockchain is getting absolutely clogged. It's like $20. Excuse me, it's $30 to do a Bitcoin transaction in 2017. When people couldn't move their Bitcoin, where did they go? They went to XRP. Obviously, different circumstance in regards to the SEC, all that good stuff. But that's just for the United States. The rest of the world still has access. But all of this occurred with Bitcoin, $40, $50, $60 transaction fees. Also, Bitcoin's exhibited all the signs that the bottom is already in, whether it's the monthly time frame, weekly time frame, indicators all over the place, price behavior. 2022 is behind us, and it's hard to believe we're actually 5 months into 2023, and it's essentially been great this year so far. And so the only conditions for price appreciation to occur for XRP are when Bitcoin is either going into a retracement or going for a breakout into a new all-time high. And while this may be my theory, this is still bullish to continue moving up higher. Maybe temporarily painful, but still bullish to move up higher. This is not a crashing structure that says, hey, we're going to 12K now. This is a correction. This is where retail investors scream manipulation, only for things to turn around and work their way back up again. And so I think we are in a condition with Bitcoin to continue working its way up, which is a condition for XRP. And that I personally, as you guys know, I don't think Bitcoin's going to set a new all-time high. I think it's that big moment of the retracement. And are these things confluent with that? A correction, then it turns up and it heads higher into a retracement. Yes, a correction that is still bullish, taking off into a retracement. Yes. And I always know it is like the not coolest thing to say it's about Bitcoin because we have so many narratives in the XRP community, whether it's peg to gold, buybacks, quantum financial system. I don't even know how many there are at this point, but it makes for good clicks. And the thing that doesn't make for good clicks for XRP is to say XRP is tied to Bitcoin. It's like, no way. Blah, la, 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 fingers and ears. I'm not listening. But I do believe we're getting close to where the exciting phase of the market can come. We're just kind of having to get through this particular moment. Again, I put the most weight on it. This is what's coming. Leads to another move down in XRP. Boom, great, good stuff. But I'd be naive to say, hey, we can't just ignore it that we're at the support level. If this is a fake out and this starts turning back to the upside, we may already have bottoms being in. Again, I put an 85 to 90% probability. We're going right through it. The cruel summer's ahead of us. But we're at this moment like, hey, we've talked about this. I said weeks of ranging. Now I'm sitting here saying, I think we're like right at the cusp. This decision is about to happen. And this is also one of those good things to pay attention to, that like I always talk about magical unicorn, fairy dust, puppet masters pulling the puppet strings, God or a simulation, that narratives tend to show up when they're supposed to show up. You guys have all heard the term, show me the chart and I'll tell you the news. After spending a whopping 214 days below the 200-day moving average in 2022, the day after the altcoin market touches the 200-day moving average is when CZ Binance goes after FTX, and then FTX collapses subsequently the following days. Show me a chart. I'll tell you the news. We're at a point right here. If this is about to break down, and if investors are going to scream manipulation, and everybody's going to be wrong-footed in here and mad, and then subsequently be very afraid of the market and screaming for 12K, we are primed for something to show up here. some type of event of something. And if it does, well, then your world may change. Because mine changed a long time ago when I realized that somehow these charts not only predict price action, they can predict events occurring in the world too, as if events are timed. And so as we're talking about all of this, the great thing, and it feels early, it feels like we're having to kind of be cautious here. But what are we talking about? We're talking about trying to find the bottom finally. After spending the last 1 month and 20 days or so looking for this pullback to happen, we're in the depths of it. We've been pulling back now. And finally, it's no longer talking about, hey, I still think this is what's going to end up happening. Now it's kind of been like, all right, let's start looking for stuff that will say that the bottom can start to come in. And even right now, if you look at what XRP is doing, you can see it's actually just whacked its 200-day moving average. So there's a reason to start just kind of be like, okay, it's time to start kind of paying close attention. There's things that can happen for a bottom to be forming in here. There's some indicators that can act as a support, can act as resistance. 200-day moving average goes down and it hits it after breaking out. We saw that exact thing happen for Bitcoin, but we also have to be mindful that it's not that easy. But that it's no longer about being, I think we've got to keep coming down. I think we've got to keep coming down. I think we've got to keep coming down. It's now about, it's time to start really looking for things to show up to say, we're not going down anymore. And if there's a place for that to happen, to say, we're not going down anymore, it's right here, right now. To watch this particular support level and see if this is a fake breakdown. As I stated over here on Twitter yesterday, that typically these will plow through the support and breakdown. And it's important to watch because this is where fake outs can happen. Should supports hold, it's time to consider the bottom forming. Eyes on it closely to see if it fakes or plows. I think the next 2 days are probably going to be pretty important to keep an eye on this to see what happens. So I want to be clear. I am not calling bottom, but what I am saying is that the messaging on my channel is now shifting. I've spent the last 49 days talking about us getting up here and then rolling over. That is no longer going to be the messaging on here. Now the message is actively searching for a bottom to come in and looking for the signs of a bottom to be in. I don't necessarily see those signs yet. I do have my worries about Bitcoin over the next couple of days with the location of where it's at, but it does mark a milestone with this move that we had yesterday to change the tune of the channel from saying we need to pull back to now saying it's now time to actively be searching for a bottom to come in. So we'll watch Bitcoin for the next couple of days to see how it reacts. If Bitcoin gets that plow right through there, what does history of crypto tell us? It tells us that there would likely be a move here in XRP should that happen. And in that event, I will be going ham, as the young kids call it. I'm young, right? Upper 30s, still young? Yeah. But, if we get that move over there in Bitcoin, we get the price to fall over here in XRP, just be prepared, man, out there, or lady, out there, it's going to be pretty pessimistic out there on Twitter. You got the credit default swaps up there at the highest we've ever seen in history, higher than the great financial crisis on the 1-year bonds. You got the debt ceiling deadline coming up on June 1st. Tomorrow we have CPI prints for inflation. My bet is everybody who is an expert on everything will suddenly become an expert on debt ceiling. That narrative looks a little too obvious, like that's the one that is going to be coming. But right now it sure seems like it. So what ends up happening in all markets all the time? When everybody's super excited and prices are high, that's where the prices fall from. When prices are low, everybody's pessimistic and fearful. That's where bottoms get formed, right? It is never euphoric at bottoms where everybody can buy in. It is never fearful at tops. It is always YOLO, super optimistic at tops. It is always super painful, super fearful at bottoms. And once you can engrave that in your mind and just learn that's just how these things always work, it becomes a little bit easier. So just kind of preparing that if we get that move down in Bitcoin, we get a move down in XRP, it's probably gonna be pessimism. Just kind of, have preparations for that in your head and then just kind of take the punches as they come and we'll try to solve the puzzle as we can. But otherwise, as you can tell, I'm not worried about it. I'm prepared for an exciting 2023. I just know from experience in this market that an exciting 2023, especially in something like XRP, it can be a short time period. It could be a month. It could be 20 days. It could be 2 months of what that exciting time period is packed into. and that you can gruel out for some time, and then all the excitement happens in a very short time. And I get it. We got this fractal pointing all the way up here. You guys know it. I'm not too keen on that. We're getting all the way to $14 or whatnot, maybe 10 or 11 if we do a full 4.236 extension. But definitely, I'm not in the camp of a lot of the moon math that's out there for, $50, $100, whatnot. But, that's for another day. That's for when things start getting moving and we can actually start like taking that serious. Right now, it's moving from one phase to the next. That's what today signifies. We're not looking for upside moon targets. We're looking to see, can we find a support and a bottom start to form in here? And it is no longer about this thing has to pull back. It is now like, okay, we're looking to see if we can get a bottom to form in here. As we're now at the 200-day moving average. This is what Bitcoin did in March. But let's pay attention to Bitcoin in the coming days, because the theory has been, this is an ABC correction on Bitcoin. If we're about to get that final move there, that capitulation of a C leg through the support level on Bitcoin, probably going to get that pull down over here in XRP as well. But that this would be that final stage of the spring phase. And this is where I will be going ham. So I'm excited that it's no longer, we got to go down. Now it's about how do we find that bottom. So I'm excited. Just keep your eyes peeled on this guy today, and don't be surprised if in the next day or two we do see that shift come really quick. We're set up where that's what typically comes next. And in the event of that coming, it sounds like in the next day or two, I will be deploying more capital into XRP. So I'm just happy to say, I'm just happy we're almost at the point where I don't have to be like, hey, I think we're going down more. I can finally start being the optimistic, let's go up guy. So, all right, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope that you're having a great day. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.